What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome back to Zer0 Thought. This time, however, I'm not alone.
Hello, I am ZoomZike. How's it going?
It's pretty good. So yeah, this is ZoomZike, and I'll start off by saying, if you haven't heard of him before, he does videos on his channel that are very similar to Zer0 Thought. So if you do like these sorts of thought-provoking explorations of ideas, definitely check out his own videos. There'll be a link in the description below. Yeah. And it's specifically for that reason that I've seen his videos and that I've been impressed with how he explores his own ideas in his videos that he's here today, because it's going to be a fun time discussing misunderstandings of gaming, which is a really broad title, but
yeah,
we're going to particularly be exploring the concept of that typical person who's not familiar with gaming, really kind of looking down or shoving to the side the whole notion of gaming. Maybe like our own experiences, you've grown up or have experienced someone who you maybe hears that you game a lot or something like that, and they're like, oh, like, how do you spend so many hours like gaming? Like, doesn't that just like rot your brain, or like, do you like even think at all or anything like that? That's sort of, I guess, looking down upon the hobby, and more so from a point of misunderstanding rather than a genuine looking down on the hobby.
Yeah. So like this can so this can come from like people who are like of the older generation, or also people who are of our own generation but like try to indulge in hobbies that are other than gaming or other than electronics. So it may not even be someone who's older than us. It might, but that's just from at least my perspective. That's kind of how it's been, where it'll be someone who might be like a decade older than me or 2 decades older than me, in which maybe they were around when maybe Donkey Kong first began becoming a thing, or arcade games were really predominant. But now that they see all these things back in their own house and they see people glued to these things, then that's when it starts becoming an issue for them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the discomfort with something you're not familiar with. And for a lot of people that were maybe in their late 20s or 30s when these video games are coming out, by that point in life, they've probably very solidly established their own hobbies, their own interests, and it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to go out of their way to find a new hobby, a new passion in one of these things that's so drastically different to all of the hobbies that existed prior to then. Not to say that there weren't games. I mean, there's still like board games like Dungeons and Dragons that were like borderline RPGs, right? Maybe they would have had a blast playing Dragon Warrior or something like that. But, and it's not to say that people can't get into new hobbies later on in life at different stages or anything like that. But it is much easier to just say that it's something foreign and to really glean what's superficial and then make an impression. And honestly, that's what humans do a lot, right?
Yeah, that's like, it's a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it can be an issue, but it's something that we're hardwired to do, right? There are things like stereotypes, there are things like prejudices, people make assumptions, and a lot of times they can be problematic, but what's important is to be aware of them, right?
Yeah.
And to train yourself to interpret them accordingly, right? Nobody's gonna walk into everything with a complete blank slate. I mean, if people did that, they would die. Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but we
like,
got
people would die
some way or another.
Like I can almost guarantee we're programmed to think that way, because using information from previous experiences and appearances and environments to judge, whether or not you're in danger in a particular occurrence is probably a survival benefit,
Yeah. I think this is especially interesting because when I consider the difference between a generation that grew up with only books and maybe movie theaters as a comparison to just television, right? So maybe at that point it's like, oh, wow, all these movies that we watch in movie theaters, you can just watch them all the time now. That's rotting your brain. So it kind of confuses me, so that's why I hope I can understand this a little bit more. It kind of confuses me how we have a generation who did grow up with television and yet trying to make that comparison to video games, because the only real difference between watching TV and playing video games is the interactivity. I think there might be
Yeah.
a couple other differences, but that's like the core one, right? It's interactivity between what you're seeing on your screen. And then some video games have a bunch of cinematics. Some video games aren't nearly as engaging. It depends on like the person, whoever's playing, right? Because there's a bunch of different genres of those things.
And the genre.
Yeah, so that's why. Is it the cord? Maybe it's the cord. Maybe they just see you holding onto something, and then they see this cord plug into the TV. Maybe they think that the TV's like sending a virus to you. I don't get it. It's just
they're trapping us with the cord or something like that.
It's like
No, I actually have a lot of frustration with this sort of dichotomy. Not dichotomy. What's the word? Not paradox. Contradiction
just hypocrisy.
of some sort. Double standard.
Yeah, it's what it is.
Borderline. Of between TV watching and video games. And I think with the onset of like Netflix and more portable, accessible video watching via YouTube, it's not even necessarily TV shows anymore, right? Especially amongst my generation, our generation, we're not the same age, but we're both young, and
yeah.
And so I feel like it's become more comfortable, but especially growing up, it was more okay to watch TV than it was to play video games. And I think a lot of it has to do with this discomfort with video games, this lack of familiarity with video games, and familiarity with TV, and also the inherent, even if not completely conscious, desire to not, I guess, like attack your own habits.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like someone would be a lot more apprehensive to claim that TV watching is similar to video gaming, as they're also claiming, video gaming is rotting out their brain because you're looking at a screen for hours.
Yeah. To add on to that, especially with TV watching, I'm not really like a Netflix watcher too often. I'm watching The Office, but like that's just like that's like one thing I've seen. But I noticed on Netflix, I didn't know this before, but when you finish an episode, it starts the next one like within like 10 seconds, and then YouTube is becoming a thing where it started autoplay. I'm not sure when that happened. I think it was last year. But
I think it was a couple of years ago, because I remember
Was
it bugged me. I immediately turned it off as soon as it was available.
Okay, yeah, but with Netflix, it's like the moment you finish the episode, like 10 seconds, it starts counting down, it plays the next one. So you can actually just sit there and it will go through the entire series with or without you. I think it asks if you're there at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It does.
Yeah, video games, you're constantly stimulating yourself through like an interactive medium, making sure that every movement that your player makes, again, there's a difference in functionality in every game, but for the most part, you're the one that's controlling what is being shown to you, and you're actually impacting the world. So I feel like that's a lot better than sitting on the couch or sitting wherever you will be, watching the same thing, not the same thing, but just go by you over and over.
Yeah. I also think a big aspect of this is connotations or associations with each of these mediums or media, right? So something like watching TV, right? That's something that all ages do. And as a result, it's considered acceptable to be watching TV at any age.
Oh, yeah.
However, gaming is heavily associated with children and kids, and it's changing now more so than probably ever. And it's progressively getting more and more okay to as an adult game, but it's still very much lagging behind TV in that regard, right? Maybe even in the same sense like sports.
Yeah.
Except that transition probably happened a long time ago. I don't know if there was ever a time in history where people were considered too old, not because of physical reasons, but because of their like maturity to play sports.
Maybe different sports. Like I feel like something like golf, I don't really think is like for the younger crowd as much as it is for like the older crowd,
the adult crowd.
Yeah. Huh. Like I was trying to think. There was something like, because with gaming, something like that, it's because you have all these adults who, back in their day, they didn't really have as much capabilities to play it as much as us, Because, like, when they went to the arcades, they went over there, and it was kind of, like, video games nowadays, like, it is a bit of a privilege, but you had to go out of your house back then. You had to walk over to an arcade, and you had to play these games. You have to put quarters in, sometimes you would die, and they still have arcades nowadays. But now that it's all right here, it's like, I don't know if there's
so much more accessible.
Yeah, it's so much more. It feels like, I don't know. And Here, let me just move on to this other thing I was thinking about because it just popped into my head.
Okay.
Do you think it had to do with like real people? Because like on television, like whatever shows they're watching, they actually see real actors, people that they know, they've seen on social media. Whereas video games, you see all these fictional characters, and like you said before, it might have been more of a cartoony thing. Because
I actually think, this this definitely strikes a bit of a nerve with me because I'm an avid anime watcher. And I'd argue, anime is very much an adult medium, as other forms of TV is, because of the, ideas, the plots, the emotions it explores that are sometimes way beyond that of, even a child's comprehension. Let alone they should, even it'd be concerning if they were able to comprehend maybe. And I do think there is that sort of an association that it's not, involving real people. So again, but like, where does that sort of discomfort come from, right? Yeah. Why are people less okay with a medium that involves not real people, or like very clearly portrayed as not real people, than other people? And I'm trying to think as well, even just some of the most like popular games, or maybe the most widely accepted to play games from like a social standpoint, are probably those with real people. And I'm thinking sports games, I'm thinking your shooters, right?
Yeah, maybe that. I was thinking when you said that, I first thought about Minecraft, because like that's something, or Tetris, because those are games that are really blocky and they aren't really realistic, which is funny because that's kind of going against what I was saying earlier. I don't know, because those are like, I think what I'm trying to say is video games where you have these kids, and it is an interactive thing, right? If your child is sitting down and they have a controller plugged in and they are playing as a character, obviously the parents know, oh, that is my son playing as that character, right? If he's killing tons of people, whether it be Grand Theft Auto 5 or Halo or Call of Duty, if he's killing a bunch of people, then that person is going to worry about the influence of that person kind of role-playing in a way as that character in that environment, right?
Or they're only going to do so once there's a school shooting.
Oh yeah. That's a whole nother thing. I don't even want
nice little jab at the media there.
Oh my gosh.
I've actually, when I was in college, I actually did a 20-page paper on the effect of violent video games on adolescent behavior, and so I could talk for a long time about it.
Oh no, so that because I took a sociology class and I did a smaller paper on that, and I'm trying to look for evidence on this stuff, and there's nothing. I can't find anything.
Yeah. Dude, I'll send you my paper. It's got a bunch of citations at the end.
Like, it's so weird because I know children will look up to video game role models because I know I did, where you're playing as a character in a video game, they might do something cool, or again, like watching an anime, because I watch anime a lot too. And I feel like it's easier to relate to people in video games because when you're controlling them, you're doing their reaction, they have emotions, you're the one that kind of determines if they die or not in that video game, right? Although there might not be that much of an impact because you have, extra lives, but still. Whereas when you're on TV and you're watching it, it's not, I just don't really get that same kind of relation, So maybe that,
without a doubt.
Yeah, maybe that sort of thing's lost on them. It's a little weird.
Yeah, the true sort of like connection you have with the character you're controlling, right?
And but even then, there are, like you said earlier, how it's a fear of the unknown. Like, it makes me worry that, like, my generation, this whole generation we have here, if, like, 10, 20 years from now, maybe there's gonna be AI robots that are created, and then, like, maybe my son or daughter is gonna be, like, dating some waifu or something. Like, waifu became real, right? And then I'm just sitting here like, we had real girls back then. We didn't have
back in the day.
And at that moment, I'm gonna think about this and then be like, what if I'm being that generation right now that's not accepting? Like, what if I'm the problem?
I do think AI strikes, some other nerves people have just from being people, right? Like being outclassed, being, surpassed by AI, being outsmarted, being more, useful than actual people, replacing jobs. I think there are a lot of things that are, intrinsically scary to just about any human, beyond just sort of just like being different than what has been, the standard.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, just the recent, within like the past decade or so, just with like gender and sexuality, that's a pretty good example of just how relationships and romance has changed significantly in the past decade. And who's experiencing the most discomfort with that? The older generations, really.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
not to say that it's non-existent amongst our generation, but like it's predominantly from older generations.
That being said, I don't I don't want to be biased or anything, but I don't
You're
think
fine.
that this younger generation is going to go through as much of an issue with accepting things from younger generations because of the internet. Because we have been introduced to so many things so much quicker than the older generation has, right? I don't want to say that we're smarter, but we've had more of a privilege to get so much more information at a much quicker rate.
Without a doubt.
Oh yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, so I feel like by having all this, like this mass of information, I feel like back then, or I'm sorry, like when our younger generation has their waifus or whatever, it's gonna be like, okay, well I can kind of accept that for this or that reason.
Yeah, I do think just in general, our generation will be more accepting of typical things. That said, we are, speaking within our own very tolerant bubble, because it's not to say that our generation, as a blanket statement is entirely accepting. But I was gonna say something. I forget what it was. I do think, quality of information is gonna be a problem going forward.
Oh yeah.
So there is a ton of information, but the quality of information and what information you get or where you get it from is something I think is going to be a concern going forward. So when the internet first came out, right, it very much just existed, and it existed as a place to be used by users, but now it's kind of shaping to become more of a bidirectional relationship where the internet is using its users in addition to the users using its internet. And I think even beyond that, the spheres, the spaces in which you interact with information are becoming more and more closed, actually, despite the more and more vast access to more information.
That's pretty interesting.
And so I think that despite the increased access, the amount or like the spaces from which information is being accessed is actually decreasing, thanks to algorithms and tailored internet experiences and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, like then we have that whole Facebook thing, and it just creating these like echo chambers, trying to get out of these things. Maybe
exactly.
Yeah, that is a pretty big issue.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, lack of understanding, right?
Yeah.
The other big thing I wanted to talk about was a kind of concern for health, right? So a lot of times, hear people saying like, "Oh, get outside, like do something, move." Your eyes are gonna go bad, your brain's rotting away, right? And a lot of times you're gonna hear those things from your parents, right? Someone who's concerned about you because they think you're doing something bad to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so, where is there validity in that, right? What do you think?
That is kind of interesting, because sometimes you'll see people who game up into the night. They'll be on their Xbox, their PlayStation, or maybe their PC Master Race. It doesn't matter, right? So they'll be sitting there in the same exact position, and they'll just stay up. They'll stay like that until midnight. But what is the validity in that? I'm not really sure. I can't, because I just keep coming back to, like, well, you guys watch television, Like, it just keeps going more and more and more. And at least with video games, there is a separate company, like, at least Nintendo, right? Started with Nintendo Wii, like, Wii Sports. So, like, over, like, 80 million copies or something, if I remember. I'm not sure if it's the most sold game ever. It's one of those, well, it was bundled. But, like, you have Wii Sports, you have, like, Wii Fit, Wii Sports Resort, even some adults got in on that. So, like, Nintendo really pushed for that kind of thing. So I feel like when you look at that kind of effort to get people fit and to get people moving, and we even have these, like, Dance Dance Revolution games and all these other games, like, I don't really understand. Like, I don't see television doing anywhere near the same kind of thing. And you have VR, like, people are walking around, like, they're trying to get people active, It just
so again, I mean, it comes back to that sort of like, what are you comfortable with, what are you familiar with, and they try to pick, on gaming for, being unhealthy for the exact same things that TV watching is unhealthy. And I'd argue, as you have as well, that TV watching is significantly less active, even if only mentally, than gaming. But as far as actual, health concerns, right? Just looking at gaming on its own, not in comparison to other, activities. I mean, it'd be ignorant to say that there's nothing wrong with it, right?
Of course.
I think, so a little bit of background, I can talk a little bit more confidently about health concerns as a now second-year medical student.
Oh yeah, I want to hear this.
Just finished up the other day with my first year, and there's no doubt that video gaming promotes a more sedentary lifestyle, and I think that's the biggest concern. Now, in and of itself, does gaming, like, negatively affect your body? It can if you overdo it, right? You hear of carpal tunnel, right? a very common problem that certain gamers have. You know, aside from that, eye damage, right? A lot of times what keeps your eyes healthy is you have two different sets of muscles that adjust your lens and your pupil to focus in on certain things. And so much like other muscles in your body, if you're looking at the same depth for a long period of time, your muscles will atrophy. You'll start to lose the ability to use those muscles over time, and your eyes will deteriorate more quickly than someone who's exercising them every day, right?
Yeah, and granted, games like that are on the computer, you're going to be a lot closer than you would be if you're watching TV sitting on the couch. And, there are all those yellow glasses too. I'm not really sure what they're called. I just know gamers wear that. Does that help at all? Like, have you ever...
The gunner glasses. Admittedly, I'm not quite confident enough in my ophthalmology to confidently answer. I do know that white light is more strenuous on eyes than yellow light is, and I think that's why a lot of the glasses you do see have a sort of yellow tint to make the make it less, I guess, stressful on your eyes.
I think it was just less strenuous on your eyes, make it so they don't die.
Another thing is people don't blink as often when they're playing games, and over time that actually adds up. Studies have been, that's actually pretty well confirmed with studies. So
is that
more susceptible to eye damage.
Like,
what's that?
Like, what's the issue with not blinking as much?
Drying out your eyes. So like when the drier your eyes are, the more susceptible they are to damage. And part of that is just being dry in and of itself is a bad state for your eyes, but also the fluid in your eyes helps to, I mean, it's not like the air is completely empty. There's a lot of like dust and, fine particles in the air, and they do interact with your eyes, and because you have fluid in your eyes, you're able to kind of push that to the side.
You can wash it out. That's right.
Right? Okay. So yeah, blinking is important for eye health as well. So, I know, right? But even then, is it that drastic of a thing, right? And how bad are glasses or contacts, right?
Yeah. Because I wear contacts, so hearing that, like someone's going to be focusing really hard on a certain sniper shot, or if they're playing a shooting game, they want as much precision as possible, or if they're speed running, or if they're playing like Super Meat Boy, like they're going back and forth. Like these
they can't afford to blink.
Yeah, exactly. You can't afford that, so that's why they're just going to glue their eyes, maybe lean forward. They're just going to get even closer to the screen. I can see that. That makes sense.
And I mean, like, if you have the privilege of, access to LASIK surgery, that's an option too. Although, there are recent studies that show that it's not as, successful a surgery as it's been indicated, just because of, like, how you define success, where almost half of people that actually get LASIK have permanently dry eyes that require drops daily.
I know. I want to get LASIK as soon as possible, but then I hear about people having halos in their eyes, or if they're driving, they'll see these light stops, right? Red lights, blue lights. Not blue lights, red lights, green lights, yellow lights. And they'll see these halos around it. I'm like, oh no. Or like their vision during nighttime sucks.
I was thinking about it too, because I mean, like, I don't wear glasses or contacts yet. It's inevitable. But I don't think potentially risking, permanent eye damage is worth glasses for me. So yeah, I don't know. And I mean, you might just wait for the surgical technology to
just wait for it to get better. That's
so there's always that option as well. But yeah, I mean, like, that's just the eyes, right? So to address a pretty quick one, rotting brain, right? This is just utterly false.
I don't get this one. Like I'm gonna try to play some kind of devil's advocate for this, and I'm not gonna have anything, but I'll try.
Like, I think the most common thing that I get from from talking with friends, making friends that don't play games, is people just perceive gaming as a kind of like brainless medium to pass time, something you do but don't really think about. And much like people think of brains as muscles, they're not. They're actually 100% fat. But they do somewhat function in that if you use certain parts of your brain, that part will grow. You will that part will will improve its function. That's why actually, when you look at people's brains, depending on what activities they did, how they use their brain, their shape and size is actually different.
That is pretty cool. I haven't learned about that before.
Yeah, that's really cool. But there's no doubt that gaming actually does engage your brain in a lot of different ways, and whether that's reading, much the same way a book, your imagination, expanding, worlds, whether it's something that's, not providing a ton of like visual stimulus, like maybe like a visual novel, where you are forced to kind of think outside the box and imagine these situations as much. Or it could be something, you know, really intense and puzzle-wise, like one of my favorite games, Catherine, with these.
I haven't played Catherine, so like, what do you...
It's great. It's great. But then there's also, you know, spatial awareness, right?
Yeah.
Very famous, often referred to study that showed that, you know, study participants that played Super Mario 64 regularly for a period of time showed improved spatial awareness compared to people that didn't. You know, reaction time. I've always had the best reaction time out of my friend group by a good margin. So just that kind of, you know, reactiveness, reactivity, that's another aspect to it. And there's so much more, right? There's so many, I say like puzzle solving, right? Like, what does that mean? There's so many different ways you can set up puzzles in video games. Whether it's kind of like a labyrinth, a riddle, or...
It's like trying to... I'm trying to differentiate between the kinds of things that video games can provide for you in terms of shaping your brain as opposed to television. And one of the things that I just thought about was, do you know who Psycho Mantis is of like Metal Gear Solid? Do you know what that boss fight is?
Oh, I don't actually.
Okay, so in Metal Gear Solid, you go up against this person called Psycho Mantis, and this boss fight just screws with your brain. So when you first fight Psycho Mantis, the game will read your memory card and say, oh, you've been playing a lot of, and then insert game here, like you've been playing a lot of Super Mario Sunshine, or you've been playing a lot of, you know, this or that. And then it'll say, place your controller down on the floor, and I will send vibrations through it. And then the controller will vibrate, right? And when you actually fight Psycho Mantis, what he will do, he or she, whichever, what he'll do is he'll crack your screen or something, or he'll like blur out certain sides of the screen, or he'll actually deactivate your movement, leaving you to figure out how you can move again. And you actually have to change your controller port to a different port in order to move again. It's really cool. Or like I think of,
really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's such a cool boss battle. Or I think of Animal Crossing with Mr. Rossetti, where if you reset your game in Animal Crossing without saving, Rossetti will come up and say, "What, you didn't save? You can't just do that. Real life isn't like that." And he'll get upset at you, and every subsequent time you do it, he'll get angrier and angrier, until at one point he's just like, you know what? I'm getting rid of the game. And then it'll play an animation of your TV shutting off, and then it'll leave you there for a few seconds until it boots back up. It's like, gotcha!
I love that sort of thing. And then even, you know, a little bit more traditionally, just kind of, I think one of the things that, you know, really kind of bridges video gaming and other types of, like, more traditional pastimes like, I guess, TV watching and, like, reading books, other mediums that tell stories, is the visual novel. And something like Danganronpa, which I imagine almost everyone listening to this video is aware of.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Is a great way to experience a story in a more personal way, in a more interactive way, and in a more, you know, mentally engaging way with regards to solving crimes, right? You know, imagining these scenarios and trying to put together in a logical means, and really challenging yourself in whatever way, to what degree you want to, right? You can take help if you want it, right? And you can, if you put enough time and effort, make your way through it.
And of course, with games like Danganronpa, if it was, I mean, there is an anime, but like, when you have if you were to have a show like Danganronpa and it was like a bunch of seasons and stuff, yeah, sure, you can figure out things along with the protagonist, but it's always going to be going. You would have to like pause the show yourself and then think to yourself, oh, what do I have? Whereas it's just not the same as when you're on Danganronpa going through your truth bullets or your evidence, I'll just say that. You're going through all your evidence and you're trying to piece it together, and you can spend as much time on that as you want. Or with free time events, right, where you spend time with certain characters that you want, and these are things that you choose to have. So your experience throughout whatever you're, what should I say, experiencing, or whatever game you're going through, your experience through that story is going to be slightly different than the next person. Whereas if you're watching it as a television show, you know for a fact it's the same across the board for everyone. And I think
this is why people a lot of times like watching Let's Plays.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another total different topic. But I've been confronted by some people I call friends that are like, I can't even imagine why people would want to watch Let's Plays. Like, why would you watch someone play?
Why would you play?
Why not just play the game and everything?
It's like here's the thing: if you were watching it just so you could see the game, you pull up a walkthrough, not a Let's Play. Like the whole point is you want to see someone else go through it. You want to see their reactions. You want to be reminded of your first time playing that game. But yeah, that's a whole.
And speaking of, you know, Let's Plays and watching other people play games, you know, there's this fear of antisocial activity or antisocial behavior through gaming, right? Gaming as an isolated experience. And, you know, it was different 10, 20 years ago, for sure, when they were just home consoles and stuff like Discord didn't exist.
All the single player stuff and
yeah, it was a lot of single player, and if it was multiplayer, it was couch co-op or playing against each other. But you had to be in person, and so a lot of times, if a game were single player, it meant being alone playing that game.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe there is this concern that you're going to be asocial. You're going to lose friends, not make friends.
Maybe.
Socializing is key, to becoming an effective, functional human, right?
It just sucks that books were never treated like that. Like, I don't think books have ever been treated like that. It's because books have always been a thing, And it's like, I don't know.
And it's not associated with kind of like trashy media. It's considered with intelligent media.
Yeah.
Right?
That social thing, because like we have League of Legends, and League of Legends is arguably, is it the biggest? I'm not entirely sure. I know it's at like the top of Twitch almost always, unless you have maybe, because I know Fortnite.
Nowadays it's probably Fortnite.
Yeah. Even then, Fortnite too. Like it's all social, right? Like like Minecraft, Fortnite, League of Legends. You had World of Warcraft, all your MMOs, everything. Most of those top
and it's not
games,
just social because they have multiple players. It's because when you play these games, you typically play them with other people and form relationships or friendships with them over time, right?
Yeah. Like, that being said, you can watch like movies, you can watch television with people, but I mean, it depends if you want them to be talking like.
But that's far from a social interaction, right?
It's way further.
Like, that's one of the things. That's part of why it's so difficult for me to actually like sit down and watch movies most of the time, is because most often it's done in a way that's supposed to be a social interaction. If my family were to be like, stop playing video games, come watch a movie with us. I'd be like, I don't feel like maybe I'm sitting in the same room as you. If you want, I'll bring my PS Vita in here and I can play my game with headphones in. We'll sit here. Yeah. But like, it's not going to be any different really than maybe I'll be able to have a 5-10 minute conversation about how good the movie was afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's the social experience you're in.
Yeah, like what's the point? Just watch in separate rooms. Like whenever someone, like if I'm in a voice channel with someone, they want to watch something, and if I were to talk and then maybe they were a little annoyed by it, then it's like, well, what's the, like, why am I, why don't we just watch it separate then? What's the point? Do you just feel better that like my presence is here? I mean, I guess so.
That said, I mean that there is a point in that, right? Being around people can be something that's nice, just existing in the same room. Obviously, it depends on who that person is, and it varies from person to person as to how long and how close they like to be, with people. And recognizing that difference and recognizing yourself or that like your own stance on that is important as well.
Yeah. And
that's another thing I want to talk about is maybe gaming just in general attracts people that don't enjoy socializing as frequently as other people, That's people that really enjoy socializing are probably going to be going out and meeting people in person at various places, various events. And maybe gaming just attracts a crowd that likes to stay inside and play a game by themselves every now and then.
Yeah, like you don't really like with movie theaters, right? Like in order to watch a movie, like before everyone else, it can be out on Blu-ray maybe months later, but in order to watch it before everyone else, you have to go out and see that movie in a huge room full of hundreds of other people, right? We don't have that with games. Like the moment a game comes out, heck, you can download it digitally, right?
Yeah,
like, that's the thing. Or you can just bring it to your house. We don't have these things where you go over there and it's like, oh hey, let's play this new game that came out all together. No, that's just, you bring that home. It's not really a big social thing. I mean, we have E3, but that's just like a once a year thing, It's even then.
I mean, so I really think that misunderstanding is something that is just more so a persistence and an unfamiliarity with the technology surrounding gaming now. Because like that has very much changed. You could argue more so in the past that gaming was more, antisocial, I guess.
Yeah.
Or rather, asocial is technically the word, than it is now. But even then, I grew up watching my friends play games. I would watch my best friend Kyle play Paper Mario for hours. And I just absolutely loved it. I would play Super Smash Bros. With friends. Sometimes I actually play, It could still very much be a social experience.
Even if they're like a single person, like if I'm watching someone play Super Mario Sunshine, then it's like whatever moves they do, maybe they might fool around, maybe they'll only stay in one area, maybe they'll just spin jump all the way throughout the level. It's gonna be different,
right.
Because it's like, hey, that's the person playing. Or like if
Right.
it's kind of interesting. Like if I'm watching Melee and I don't know the names of the players, based on that playstyle, I can kind of tell who's playing who.
A bit about their personality.
Yeah, a little about
and
maybe a little bit about their personality, or you can kind of guess what character belongs to what person based on their playstyle, and it just kind of it's almost like magical in a way, where you can see this fictional character move around a specific way, and you can link that to an actual person controlling that character.
It's very much an extension of themselves.
Yeah,
right?
in a way, yeah. Again, like just like what I said at the beginning, like the cord, like goes all the way to the console. Like I don't know, it's we're going wireless almost.
But who's controlling who?
Yeah, exactly. No.
But I guess one of the other things that I think is actually more of a valid, health concern is the promoting a sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not mentally, but physically, because there's no doubt that physical fitness is important to long-term health outcomes. And it's not that gaming in and of itself is like bad, but it's kind of like it predisposes you, much like your genetics might predispose you to like high blood pressure or something like that.
Yeah.
Being interested in gaming predisposes you to being likely to have a sedentary lifestyle. And what does a sedentary lifestyle lead to? It leads to lack of physical activity, which is in and of itself, its own unhealthy thing.
Yeah.
It leads itself to, as a result, obesity, which, given that well over a third of the U.S. at least at this point is obese.
Yeah.
Not just overweight, obese.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's only going to be going up. And then obesity in and of itself, it kind of wreaks havoc on your body in a lot of ways that go beyond.
Like #1 killer in the U.S. Right?
Yeah. I mean, like,
at least of that.
I've been learning about it a ton, right? And it's not just your heart; it's your lungs, it's all of your, GI, your abdomen. And it's not just like your heart; it's all of your vasculature as well. It's your it's like your nervous system as well. There's something like it's predisposition towards diabetes, which predisposes you, will eventually lead to what's called diabetic neuropathy, where you get peripheral peripheral artery disease, and you're unable to effectively deliver blood, puts you in like a hypercoagulable state, putting you at risk for so many other different things. Like, it's really, there's value in accepting your body and feeling okay with your body as it is, but there is also value in recognizing the health risks associated with your body as it is. And I feel like a lot of the discussion about being overweight is focused on the aesthetics, but not how it actually affects your body. And it actually affects your body in a very complex way.
Oh yeah, mentally too. Like
yeah,
if someone wants to feel better mentally too, like all these things are connected, like social, physical, mental. Like you gotta bring yourself together. Yeah.
And so I would say like that is probably the biggest risk associated with gaming, is the predisposition towards obesity, and as a result, diabetes, hypertension, stuff like hypercoagulability, and then even potentially.
What's that?
I mean, like I want to say stuff like deep vein thrombosis, or like
that's in the legs, right? Because I think there's
most often, you can get them in your shoulders or whatnot, but. I mean, like, as an example, just being obese in general, puts more pressure on your blood vessels. Having high blood pressure leads to what's called arteriolosclerosis or atherosclerosis, which decreases the size of your blood vessels because it's kind of like fibrosis or like a thickening of your blood vessels, so they lose their elasticity. And then that increases the blood pressure as well. And if you're not working your heart as often, you actually need to essentially increase the constriction of your blood vessels to maintain your blood pressure a bit too. So that increases your blood pressure as your heart essentially gets weaker as well. And as you have higher blood pressure, you're more likely to tear your vasculature as well. And that, as a result, leads to more fibrosis and more thickening of your arteries and such. And as you, and something else that's actually not, I think, popularized is that extra fat tissue actually produces estrogen, and it's not 100% understood how, but when you have more estrogen,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, both male and female have it, just different proportions.
Oh, okay.
And estrogen is associated with hypercoagulability, which means it's more likely that your blood will clot. So that, mixed with high blood pressure and with smaller vasculature and
That's a
everything.
nightmare.
And like this is just like cardiovascular. And the thing is, once your vasculature starts giving out, what starts resulting? You get weaker. You start not being able to effectively supply certain parts of your body. That's why something like diabetic, or like diabetic foot, if you've ever heard of it, is basically you eventually lose circulation to your foot. You're unable to adequately supply the tissues, and they start to die off. And as you're unable to, supply the tissues, your immune system can't effectively, defend things. So you're more susceptible to infection. And it's just like one big positive feedback loop that's really difficult to get to stop. Once it's started. And sorry about that rant, I guess.
Oh no, that
but
was
that's probably like the
I
biggest concern I would associate with gaming is that. And it's not even exclusive to gaming, right? It's part of TV watching. It's a part of sitting, right? If you have an office job, you're also susceptible to this.
Yeah.
I know there was a study that correlated the amount of time you spend in a day sitting with your mortality.
Oh gee, dude, that's scary. Looking at
How
stuff
crazy
like
is that, right?
Looking at stuff like that, I won't I'll read like a quarter of the article, and the rest of the article I'll just be standing. The rest of the article.
Yeah. I'm gonna stand up and finish this article.
Yeah.
But.
It's kind of interesting.
So I mean, like,
you mentioned that it's the same as like watching TV or if you're working on something while you're sitting, but I think it's even more interesting in terms of gaming, because if you're holding onto a controller, in order to continue the game, you have to keep your arms or your hands in a certain position the entire time when you're holding it. Whereas because television isn't an interactive medium, you can lay around in whatever position you want. You can move around wherever. You're not restricted by a cord. Even if you are playing wirelessly, like with... Actually, that's why I really like the Joy-Cons. Just like shout out to the Joy-Cons, because you can take these things, separate them, stretch your arms out. You can like scratch behind your head. You can lay down and play with them. Those things are awesome. But yeah.
I guess one other thing real quick is carpal tunnel. Because honestly, it really comes down to wrist posture more so than anything else. So it's like 100% preventable unless you're, I don't know, a professional StarCraft player or something like that, where you're literally training to move your hand around on the keyboard with weights on it, something ridiculous like that.
You have like a bunch of macros,
avoidable, especially with posture. So, I guess that really kind of covers a lot of the maybe like health concerns or like concern for the well-being of someone playing gaming that maybe give rise to this.
I was thinking,
the last thing I really want to talk about.
I actually had something that didn't come up when I was thinking about this topic in general, which was the addictiveness of video games. And we were talking about, and actually kind of had a theory on this. So when they say that video games are running your brain, I feel like there's more of an addictive quality when one plays video games as opposed to playing television. And I think it stems from this. So when you're playing a video game, it is interactive, right? You yourself are the one that achieved that goal. But when you're watching something on television, you know that's not you. You don't have this very same connection. And although I don't really like it as much for that, that's where this addictiveness comes into play. So if you see someone on the television doing a bunch of these cool stunts, a bunch of this and that, it's like, wow, that was really cool, right? But you know you weren't the one that did that. Whereas when you do something in a video game and you achieve a bunch of goals, then you get that whole release of dopamine, then you feel good about yourself, and then it creates this cycle where you want to do more and more cool things because you feel like you're kind of tricking your brain that you're achieving something worthwhile. And it may be worthwhile like to you because it's all perspective, right? But in terms of your actual life, it may not be doing as much for you as you wish it would. Whereas television doesn't really have as much of that effect.
Yeah, because you're not as invested in it, right?
Yeah.
And you can't necessarily attribute the success of the individuals in the movie to your own, to yourself, right?
I'd like to see the addictiveness quality between the two. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look that up later.
Yeah, I think the addiction that we associate with TV is more so about kind of like mass media binging culture, more so than gaming sort of like actually triggering the reward pathway in your brain. Addiction, which is interesting. Yeah, I definitely need to look into that a bit more, because people would definitely say that TV is addicting, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's more so in that TV shows trigger your brain or kind of hook your brain in. It's like curiosity, it's desire to know, it's desire to know what's going to happen.
It may also in addition be filling the hole too.
In addition to this kind of like media consumption culture that we have today about just doing so as efficiently as possible, as much as possible, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All that sort of stuff playing into it, which is a very different type of addiction than you would probably find with a video game where you're leveling up or you're doing loot boxes.
Oh yeah. Loot boxes.
You know.
That's a.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing. But yeah, there are definitely some valid health concerns. There's some invalid, but either way, I think it's helpful to understand what they are, right? So I think something, you know, an example might be Markiplier, who now records all of his games and, you know, plays games standing.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, and it's because when you're standing, even if you're not moving a lot, you're not taking a lot of steps, you know, your Fitbit might not tell you you're doing much more exercise than if you were sitting, but simply by standing, you're using more energy, you're forcing your heart to move a little bit more, and you micro-adjust your posture a lot more, and so over time, you'll actually be using muscles more than you would be if you were sitting. So like, in general, it's a bit healthier. Now, of course, that does have its own sad things.
I'm sure it does.
At risk for what's called like varicose veins or like spider veins.
It's like why are our bodies like this? Why can't like, every little thing?
I mean, the idea is like everything in moderation, right?
Yeah, of course.
And so like, I mean, it's not like by the time you're even 30-ish or something like that, you'll have these like varicose veins, because the way your veins work is they've got, you know, these valves, and they are paired to your muscles pretty much, so that when your muscles contract, they push blood up against gravity, and then these valves close so that it can't flow backwards. Yeah. And the idea is the more essential like gravitational stress, I guess, you put on your body, on your blood, on these valves over time, it's more likely they'll eventually leak back, and that's what causes varicose veins. But like, honestly, in comparison, you know, it's a pretty limited I guess
that's interesting. I didn't know that about Markiplier.
I think that's why like PewDiePie does it too. Honestly, I do as well. But I also like studying standing up. I'm just more comfortable doing so. Yeah. So
I just make myself move around. Study. Like, even it's not even just a comfort thing. Like staying in the same position all the time just isn't really comfortable for me. That's why I like put my legs up on the bed, or maybe stand.
It'd be really cool to have like a treadmill desk or something like that.
That'd be cool. Oh my gosh, I've always thought about that. I really wish I could have one of those.
Yeah. But anyways, I hope this was like at least helpful for like understanding, you know, a lot of the health concerns, and that some of them are actually valid, you know, because a lot of times when this interaction happens where gaming gets, you know, looked down upon, especially to someone who, you know, invests a lot in gaming, there's this immediate sort of, you know, trench building where you're associating, you know, I'm on this side, this person on this side, this person is attacking something I like to do, I need to defend what I'm doing, and there's an immediate sort of writing off of, you know, the other side, right? Oh, yeah. But I hope that this discussion, I mean, I should probably say, like, do you have anything else you'd like to discuss? But I think we've been going for a bit and have covered this pretty, I guess I won't say comprehensively, but we've covered quite a bit of it, or at least some of the main points I wanted to touch on. But I hope that this promotes a mutual understanding, right? It's not like we were trying to claim, like, oh, this person is completely incorrect. On certain points, they might be. But as a whole, there is actually some validity to these concerns, and it's important to not write them off and to seek to understand why someone might think this way, even if they're not even 100% sure why they feel that way, right? And I hope that this discussion was also helpful to think about it in your own way, right? You know, everybody's different, and I'm sure you guys could come up with some points from your own experiences that are different from our own.
Dude, I'd love to hear the other side on this. Like, I know. I just love to hear that. I'd love to have a discussion with someone on that. That'd be really interesting.
Right. It would be really cool. I feel like it'll be really difficult to find someone to, you know, hop in a Zer0 Thought video for YouTube, you know, if they're not already in sort of gaming culture. But
that's funny. They're just curious.
That's, you know, one of the difficulties. But it would be really cool to have that discussion. And I think overall, I hope this educates to a bit, at least to an extent, this sort of discussion. So you have things to talk about. So you have means to support your points, to validate other people's points, to really just kind of come to a mutual understanding. That's the main goal of really any discussion. I mean, maybe not in court or something like that, but arguably it should be, but it's not.
That's...
But yeah, so I guess that's all we've got for now. This went on for a lot longer than I thought.
I wasn't even
it would
keeping
have,
track
so
of time, honestly. I was just.
It's been almost an hour. So yeah, I was expecting like a clean, like 15-minute, 20-minute discussion or something like that. But this is what happens when you explore ideas with someone that's
like,
down to explore ideas too, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about it too. The topic is brought up, and I'm like, I wonder how long we can go on this for. Probably like 30 minutes tops. It's probably like not that much. But then as we kept going, it's like, man, like I'm getting into this. This topic is pretty interesting. Yeah. It's because it's related to us.
So congrats to the people that made it this far. Congrats to the people that listened to all of this. I mean, at this point, it's essentially a podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
But, I want to thank you, Justin.
No.
Am I cool calling you Justin on the
internet? No, you're fine. You're good.
Okay. I want to thank you, Justin, for taking the time to have this discussion with me. It was, absolute blast. And I want to remind everyone that if you enjoyed hearing us talk about this, exploring ideas, and in general, if you like Zer0 Thought, do check out his videos because they're really cool.
It's really cool. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad that we did this.
I'm glad we did it too. So, all right. Well, I guess until the next episode of Zer0 Thought, whatever that topic may be, this has been Midnight Zero.
Okay. All right. And ZoomZike.
And this mission is complete.